Hello, and welcome back for another episode of this season of Try This on Wisp Sports. I'm your host, Dr. Kirstin Lauritsen, and we are back, and I am back. I have spent an entire week recovering. I actually spent quite a good amount of time on the couch watching TV, something I don't do a whole lot of unless I'm not really feeling well. And I'm so glad that I took the time to recover. I was kind of saying the phrase in my head, it takes courage to recover. It really does. And I was feeling like towards the end there, I really wanted to go out and start training again. But when I would stand up from the couch, I didn't always feel super great still. I was kind of getting bursts of dizziness and some nausea and some waviness is what I call it. It just feels like you've been on a dock or a boat for a long time and you're just doing that bobbing up and down. If you've ever felt that feeling, I just kept kind of getting rounds of that. So I was like, it's fine. We'll just have a good week. We took it off for a reason. We'll just chill out. And turned out to be a really, really good idea because I started training over the weekend because we have the half Ironman on July 25th coming up in Salem, Oregon. So time to get back into it. We did it was a hour-long bike ride on Saturday, and I was instructed to tell my coach how I was feeling, and I said I was feeling fine. The fatigue that's there is definitely different. You just don't feel like you have the legs to push up the hills, and I just was going real slow. but it felt good to be on my bike. It felt great to be moving again. So then the next day we did a 20-minute run, super easy, and a 30-minute bike. And today I have a 45-minute bike and a 20-minute run. So just trying to get moving, trying to keep things easy. I'll definitely get into the pool this week. And then we'll have, basically we're going back into taper week again. So the point is to be moving, to be excited about moving, as my coach has told me, not necessarily trying to make any performance gains here, right? Everything that we've done up until this point is what it will be. Right now, it's just about getting moving, making sure everything feels good, and not trying to push anything too hard. And that's the thing too. Coming off of last week, I've dealt with a lot of different types of emotions and thoughts and all sorts of types of processing. And my biggest thing coming out of that race is that I just feel like it did not reflect my performance, right? I didn't feel like it really reflected how much training we had done and how much I think I'm capable of. And so I'm really looking forward to going into this half Ironman, and I'm hoping that I will have a better performance that day, just simply because my training is good. I was out biking and running just yesterday, and I feel good. I don't have aches or pains in my joints. Like I'm feeling great, and I think that's a testament to my training. So I was definitely prepared for this Ironman, and I think without the training, I would not have finished. So, okay. But so what are we doing today? So we're going to talk, the main topic is nutrition in extreme weather, which I think is a great topic to follow up last week's episode. There's quite a difference that I've learned, and I've been continuing to learn, especially this week as I've been sort of researching and figuring out some different approaches to training, and then also to racing in either extremely hot or cold races. If you know, this last weekend, Ironman UK was just what just happened, and they had rain and kind of cold weather. So let's talk about the differences in nutrition there. And then we're also going to finish this up with, I get a lot of questions when I talk about it. Why cola? Like, why Pepsi type products? Why does that work? And why chicken broth? And you would never consume soda or anything like that outside of usually a race day. So most people think that they should avoid things like Coca-Cola and stuff that's on the race course, but there's actually some pretty great reasons to use it. So we're going to talk about it today. So let's start off with hot versus cold races. So hot races in particular, what you'll find when you start reading and kind of digging into some of the different articles and research articles is that during hot races, you'll often hear that we should be maybe erring a little bit more towards liquid calories. So things maybe like having some type of sugar in your bottles. But remember, in previous episodes, we've talked about the issues with the different types of sugars, right? Like maltodextrin and fructose versus things like cane sugar or dextrose, right? And I know that this is a challenge because usually what we're doing is we're training using these different types of sugar-based fueling sources and the fuel-based sources. And that doesn't necessarily bode very well for your overall health, right? Like we know that cane sugar is something we really should try to keep to a minimum, but you have to train with it in order to know that it will be okay on race day. So one of the things that you can still do, you will hear this, is that you may want to try to err more towards the liquid calories on hotter races and maybe do more whole food during cold races. You'll be able to tolerate it a little bit better. But here's where I think you can maybe have some wiggle room as far as that goes. So there are some gels that you actually could make yourself. You could make like a Cliff Block or like a cube type a partially solid, semi-solid food. You could make something like that from home using things like cane sugar or even like brown rice sugar syrups, things like that are a really good source of sugar. Technically, I mean, your body will usually tolerate it well. You could make that from home, but you could also carry around your favorite type of candy that you like. Things like jelly beans or worms, those gummy worms, things like that. They are just straight sugar. And those, they can be really helpful as a tool if you're going to be racing in a very hot race. I mentioned that I actually did quite well in the sense of whole food, but once I ran out of water, then it all kind of went it kind of took a turn there because I wasn't able to eat because it was too dry. And I remember thinking on the bike, I wish that I had like a bottle of cane sugar in water, just trying to take in any type of liquid calories. So here's where I would say we can kind of come to a medium. At that point in time, I started taking in gels, but we do need to be careful because remember, and this was what I was most concerned about. Yes, we need to be taking in some type of easier to consume calorie on the course, especially when it's hot. And I think many people did use the gels that were on course, which are mostly fructose and glucose. But the GI distress that I saw along the way on the run was not great. So keep in mind that, remember from previous episodes, fructose and maltodextrin will pull water into your GI tract. So what we need to find is some and that's not good because first off, that will create GI distress. And second, that can also further dehydrate you. So we need to be very careful of that when we're thinking about racing in hot weather. So looking at something like cane sugar or dextrose is going to be probably our best bet. And looking at things like you could maybe have a bottle of some liquid calories on board, but also looking at things that are going to be easier to digest, like candy, just straight up sugar. Something very, very quick and easy to digest. So keep those things in mind. And don't ever forget that if you get that gurgly gut feeling, hydrate. And that will help to push those carbs into the gut if you're using some whole food. And then for colder races, tolerating more whole foods, you might even need more food than you think, just simply because your body will be fighting to try to keep you warm. So in either extreme, right, versus hot or cold, I think this is where testing really can come in handy if you can get into those temperatures. I think the next episode, we can talk about the differences between acclimation and acclimatization. Those are both a little bit different. And we can talk about different strategies to get acclimated or acclimatized to the weather or the environment that you are going to be in for race day, something that I probably should have done, but we didn't really have time for because it was a week and a half out when they said it was going to be 100 degrees in Coeur D'Alene. So that just was what it was. So anyway, hot races versus cold races, you may actually find that you need more calories than you think. I know we have talked in episodes previously that, an average woman can take in 60 grams of carbs an hour, maybe a little bit less depending. And then it's going to change based on where she is in her cycle. If she's a woman that does have a cycle versus if you're in the menopause side of things and all of that. But depending on where you are in the scheme of all of that, usually we don't see a tolerance for more than around 60 grams of carbohydrates in an hour, just simply because of absorption rates. But when you're in those extremes, you may find that you need a little bit more than that. And so that's where we need to have a little bit of flexibility in our nutrition, what we're bringing on board, and making sure we have some extras, usually putting those in the special needs bags, things like that, just in case. In colder races, as I mentioned, tolerating more whole food tends to be a little bit better. If you are, again, getting that gurgly gut, that's a better use for hydration and staying on top of that. In most cases, focusing more on staying hydrated is far more important than necessarily the carbohydrates and any type of calorie that you're taking on. Hydration will get you much further. But we don't want to fall apart right at the end. We don't want to fall apart on the run. So taking in more food than you think sometimes can be a very helpful strategy as far as getting through those extreme weather races. That all being said, this is where testing really is important, because you may find that you're not able to take in that much food or liquid calories or anything like that before getting some issues as far as GI or anything else, cramping, all that jazz. So just keep that in mind. Training is using different types of nutrition and training is important. And there's a lot that you can do, right? You can use things like rice cakes. You can use things like a homemade food bar with a little bit of protein, fat, and carbohydrate. Women need, and I know I'm speaking to more female athletes in general, but on this podcast anyway, but women need more than just carbohydrate. You do need a little bit of fat. You do need a little bit of protein. And then that becomes even more critical if you are on the other side of menopause and you're doing these races. A little more balance as far as fat, protein, and carbohydrate. So there's just some nuances that come in here that are important to keep in mind. But I still, even after this crazy hot race that I did, I would change some of the things that I did a little bit. But by the sense of, I think I would have brought on a little bit more liquid calories in my hydration bottles, but I still think food in the pocket and hydration in the bottle is a solid place to start. And then just altering that slightly. Like, I think I would have brought on maybe some more candy with me on the bike. I think that would have been a better thing to do than just having things like a bar. That just was very, very difficult to tolerate when I got to that spot where I just couldn't bring on anything. The other thing you want to keep in mind as well is salt. And this was something that I fell behind on because I lost my salt. And you'll see this again and again in many different articles. If you lose something and you know it, so obviously there's rules in most of these races. There's no, if you lose something and you do it intentionally, like you have a wrapper and you let it go, you can get a penalty for that. Most of the time when people lose anything on their bike or anything, it's because they don't know it. But if you do recognize that something fell out and you hear it fall out, sometimes it's worth stopping to go back and get it. And things like salts are probably one of those things. So athletes can lose anywhere from 800 milligrams to 4,000 milligrams of sodium per hour. Where are you going to get that from? That's what's so critical, especially in these hotter races. You have to look to get some type of sodium, either in a pill form or in your electrolyte drink, anything. And remember, even leading up to the day, just drinking plain water is not effective. You need to be consuming something like the salts and sugar mix that we've talked about before, which like with maple syrup, or making sure you're bringing in some type of electrolyte each day. And as I know, I've said, and we experimented with this last weekend, those pH strips that you can get, and you can do a urine analysis for yourself, are super effective for seeing if you are actually staying hydrated. But just remember, on course, if it's hot out, you're going to be sweating a lot more, and you do sweat on the swim. So if you're thirsty, when you get out of the water, it's very important that you start hydrating right away, start getting in some type of electrolyte drink. And then I'll also suggest that you go back a little bit to some previous episodes as well, because we talk about how some type of sports drinks are actually mixed a little bit too much. So there's too much sugar. There's mostly sugar in them. And so the percentage is a little bit off. And then that can create problems as well. So keep that in mind. Know your body. Try this stuff out in training if you can. I do suggest that you have some type of pill type electrolyte on you that has at least 200 milligrams of sodium content, especially for these really, really hot races. Or if you just know that you are a sweater, like if you sweat a lot, that's a really great thing to experiment with and make sure you have on you. I'm one of them. At any of the end of these races, I have salt all over me. I mean, like you just drip water on my face and I'm just tasting salt, and I have salt lines everywhere. So I know that I sweat a lot, and that is critical. That means you must get in some type of salt. So that's salt is very, very, very important. We are going to talk about, chicken broth is similar in the sense that it has a lot of electrolytes in it. It's chicken broth, and I want to touch on chicken broth towards the end, because there's actually a couple of different things with it that can be really helpful in many different ways, because they actually give it to you heated up on these races, because they don't actually put it out until the sun starts to go down. So keep listening, because we will be right back with more after this. Okay, so let's come back and let's talk about chicken broth. So why would chicken broth be something that you would want to choose before we end this with talking about Coca-Cola or Pepsi? So chicken broth doesn't just have sodium. It also has things like potassium. It has some magnesium. It has a lot of the different types of balanced electrolytes in it. And plus, they give it to you heated up. So especially with these Ironman races, if you're finishing your Ironman in 9 to 10 hours, you won't even see chicken broth on the course because you finished very quickly. But for those that are going to be out there for 14, 15, 16 hours, you start the day off potentially cold in the water, and then you go through the day, maybe heating up all day. You've got salt and sweat all over you. When those temperatures start to cool, athletes can be at risk of going from the other side of being too hot to having issues staying hot, right? It can get a little bit cold. We all know that when you've maybe been in the sun, when you have a sunburn, you get that feeling on your skin, and then that can make you feel colder or warmer, depending on where you're at. Chicken broth, the reason why they serve it is because it's just packed full of electrolytes. But it's also served warm, so it can help you to regulate your heat a little bit. That was the challenge for me, though, because even though I was taking on chicken broth, I had to still put some type of cooling something on me because the chicken broth was hot and I was still battling heat exhaustion and being so hot. I didn't really need something coming in that was warm. I really needed still very cold things because my sunburns were so bad. And I was still battling heat even though the sun had gone down. I mean, it truly was an interesting day. But the chicken broth can be effective, and it should be something that's kept in mind, just because it can be so effective for getting those electrolytes in and helping you finish out the race. So why Coca-Cola? Let's branch into this here. So Coca-Cola or Pepsi, there are so many coaches and past triathletes that will tell you, when in doubt, choose the Pepsi or cola that's on course, which seems like a weird thing. Most people wouldn't be, fueling with candy. They wouldn't be, drinking Coca-Cola or Pepsi in their normal day life. But here's why cola can work so well. First off, when you drink Coca-Cola, it actually helps to increase fatty acid and glucose mobilization for energy. So it helps with boosting energy, similar to taking in calories from like whole food, but without actually needing to take in whole food. So one of the reasons why they say, when in doubt, choose the cola, is because it can help you to manage sugar and calories coming in without necessarily stressing other systems in your body, like your GI tract. The other thing that cola can be really helpful for is if you have too much carbohydrate, or if you're not sure if you've had enough carbohydrate, what you can do is you can take it, you can put it in your mouth, swirl it around for 15 to 20 seconds, and then spit it out. You'll get some carbohydrate just from that alone, which is really incredible. The saliva and the receptors in your mouth can pull in sugar just from swirling it around in your mouth. And then at the next aid station, you can decide whether you might have been a little low or a little high. I actually used this method on the bike, on the run course, because by that point in time, towards the 20-ish, 16 to 20-ish miles, it was a challenge. It was a challenge to know what I needed at that rate. So just taking in some Pepsi can help to avoid a little bit of, if you're already having GI distress from some of the other fueling methods that you've tried, cola can be one of those things that will help to get you some of that energy without stressing that system even more. And you'd think that maybe the carbonation would not be so good, but it in most cases it turns out to be fine. And also too, they've poured it at such a rate that usually it starts to become a little bit flat by the later ends of the race anyway. But it is a great tool to use if you're just not sure if you've had too much or too little. The only thing you have to keep in mind, though, especially with cola, is that it does not have salt, right? It does not have electrolytes or potassium or anything like that. So you do need to have another plan as far as your electrolytes go. And if you need to rely on Gatorade on the course or whatever type of Powerade or whatever type of source they have, I mean, that's fine. Try to test it. But I would suggest maybe bringing some salts or something else to bring with you, just because as I mentioned, the Gatorade can be mixed in a way that it's just too high in sugar. So these are things you do need to test and try and just have a mind about yourself when you're going into that run of what you may need. Salts and electrolytes, especially in hot weather, is going to be one of those things that you're going to need probably the most. But cola can be a very good source of sugar to help get you to the end of the race. I think that's all I have to say. Oh, and then of course the caffeine. So caffeine can be a really useful tool as well. You usually see things like Red Bull at many of the Ironman races, because I think that's one of their sponsors. Also, the colas usually have some level of caffeine in them. Caffeine will also in some ways help to boost a little bit of the energy. It'll help give you that little extra oomph to get to the end. You won't usually see the effects of caffeine until about 30 minutes after consuming it. So many coaches will say, use it when you're about 30 minutes out from needing it, that couple miles out from the finish line. That's the best time to take it. But it will also get you through if you are really kind of slowing down a bit. But remember, if you're falling apart on the run, oftentimes that's because of an issue that happened on the bike, either not enough calories coming in on the bike, which was part of my issue, but also hydration is a key factor there. So when you get to the run, knowing what your options are as far as caffeine, as far as salt and electrolytes, as well as sugar, and then just straight water, it's ideal if you're not taking in just plain water, because you remember you're already going to be low in electrolytes, so you might be continuing to deplete yourself. So if you take salt pills with you, that's one way that you can balance that out, and be consuming that straight water as you go through the course. So lots of things to think about. If you have questions about it, I'd love to discuss them with you on social media, because that's our episode for now. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to follow Wisp Sports on all social media channels, and make sure to share this episode with anyone you think may love it. You can also follow me at Dr. Kirstin on Facebook and Instagram, and you can also find me at drkirstin.com. If you'd like to reach us with any comments or questions, as I mentioned, I'd love to discuss this with you. You can at either info@wispsports.com or come find us on and send us a direct message on social media. Thank you for listening, and I will be back next week. Take care.